Welcome to the Asclepion. I'm Kevin McKeag.
And I'm Luke Strom.
Our podcast dives into the deep questions of life. How do we find love, discover our true selves, and live out our dreams in this wild, weird world? We're going to take you on a journey of philosophical inquiry, spiritual adventure.
Okay. Just imagine you're like sitting around a campfire with the homies and you all start opening up and talking about real shit. That's pretty much what we're going to do here.
Yeah, or it's what I said.
Okay, look, all you need to know is that we have no idea what we're doing.
Welcome
to the Asclepion.
Asclepion.
That's what I said.
It is my prayer that right now our goal may be one, that right now our goal may be truth, so that each of us can come to seek, to find, to have, and to know the truth of who and what we really are. For it is only that knowing that will ever give us the peace for which we truly long. And on that note, let the healing begin.
Beautiful invocation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, what was that? You said no nonsense? Yeah, I call it bottom line therapy.
No nonsense spirituality. Yeah.
There you go. That'll work. That will work. Yeah.
Well, how'd you get your start, my friend?
How far back you want to go?
Let's start in the 70s.
Okay. So went to a private Catholic boys' school in Boston, graduating class of 20. And I'm going to back up just a little bit for context.
Okay.
And first 2 years was, the academic star, which didn't take much with 20 people, right? And then that brings us to 67, 68. And the age of Aquarius, you may recall, dawned. And I got into some experimentation with various substances, and which was not altogether unuseful. But at the end of senior year, I had kind of, bottomed out on that and seen a lot of people go over the cliff. And I went off to UMass, and I describe it as having these Chaucerian visions of students chasing berobed professors home. But wait, one more question. And needless to say, that's not what I found at UMass in the fall of 1969. It was pretty chaotic, and the whole hippie thing was just really digging in. And I was done with that. I wanted something else, and I came across a poster for a lecture on transcendental meditation as taught by His Holiness Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in the Mahar Auditorium, and went. And in those days, well, you had to not have taken any substances for 2 weeks. So most people had a little challenge getting the 2 weeks out of them. But anyway, long story short, started TM and left school because I was pretty disgusted with the whole thing and didn't have any more money. Went to work at the Northampton State Hospital, living on the grounds, meditating twice a day, and just absolutely just dug right into it, and got involved in the teacher training program. Went to a month course in Poland Springs, Maine, with Maharishi and about 1,500 hippies. Went to where he told us all that we were going to cut our hair and wear three-piece suits because he was done with the hippie thing as well. Then went to Europe, to Mallorca, Spain, to train, and came back and taught. TM was my life and my community for about 10 years after that. I should say, by the way, I'm not at all affiliated with the TM movement. I left in 1979 or so. Just for, that's a whole other conversation, the life cycle of charismatic spiritual groups and what happens. But the technique that I learned, try as I may to find something better, I haven't. And what I teach now is, I would say, based in the TM technique, but I've necessarily decades of teaching, added to it, and it maybe seasoned it a bit with my experience and with travels to other disciplines as well.
Yeah, so when you caught me, I was a boy of 12 years old, and I begged my mom to come and take me to you to have me initiated in TM. And it sounds like I got a little bit of the Chris Curren special there in the year
By that time,
2001.
I was well off the farm by then.
Yeah. And what was it about that charismatic community? I mean, I read into that cult a bit. Was that the vibes back then in the 70s?
It's, it just gets inbred, with the best of intentions. I remember the story I read from some Hindu scripture. A great monk went up to the master and said, "Master, I think I want to start an ashram." And the master said, "If you want to know hell on earth, start an ashram." And there's another phrase, the bigger the Dharma, the bigger the Mara. In other words, the greater the concentration of grace and truth, the more crazies you're going to attract. It's just the way it works. So in any event, without casting aspersions, it was time to go. Suffice it to say, it wasn't, there's all kinds of stories I'm sure you're familiar with of horror shows around charismatic groups, Eastern or otherwise. And it wasn't of that level. It was just getting inbred and parochial and, all this stuff that happens in movements.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I imagine the spiritual arrogance was very high in the practitioners in the community.
It was hugely painful for me to leave. It was of all the breakups I've had in my life, that was among the worst. Because it was an international community. You could go. It was a big deal. You guys weren't around at the time, but it was huge. I mean, you could go to any. I could fly to any city in the world and pick up a phone book and find a place to go and have friends. It was wonderful, and he was a brilliant teacher, truly brilliant teacher. And I've, I've studied under brilliant teachers since then, all of whom have wonderful teachings. But he was kind of one of a kind. And I'm at the end of the day, although I've definitely added to my concept repertoire, his teaching is still the bottom line.
For context, for our listeners, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi was the Beatles guru, among other things, and founded the transcendental meditation lineage in the States and in the West.
Yeah.
So you met him only a few years after he had met with the Beatles, right?
Yeah, the Beatles, I think most of the teacher training, most of the stuff happened in India. And I think I was 2 courses later that they moved to, because there was a big demand for teachers and teacher training. And what the movement did is they found these off-season resorts. So in the summer, we'd be up in the Alps in Switzerland where the skiing resorts were empty. And there was a good deal to be had there. And in the winter, we were in Mallorca, Spain, where the hotels were empty. So yeah, where I get a fair amount of world travel out of that, although, I laughed. My eyes were closed most of the time. So that's the irony of it. Oh, you've been to Switzerland? Yeah, what does it look like? I don't know. Close your eyes. That's what it looks like.
Go anywhere in the world and
it was
there
great.
You
Yeah, well, there you go. Exactly.
I'm really
Yeah.
fascinated by the 60s counterculture movement, but specifically with just the idea of how a huge part of American youth at one time could all be so interested in Eastern religion and meditation. I mean, I know that a lot of that was sort of an influx into the States, spurred in large part by Allen Ginsberg and other intellectuals at the time. But what was it like back then to feel like people, in their 20s and 30s were genuinely, that was like it was a popular thing, an ambition to try to actually meditate and focus on Eastern religions.
Yeah, this is this is where the crusty, salty veteran uh, wants to show up. I was there, and when you guys, there's a tendency to romanticize what happened, and that was maybe valid for the beginning, but the wine turned to vinegar pretty quick. But nevertheless, to your point, as a generation, I think the frustration with, on the positive side, the frustration with the materialist society, blah blah blah. Yeah, that was valid, and it was age appropriate, certainly. But sex, drugs, and rock and roll was an equal part of it, which is not particularly. I know a lot of people to this day from my era, who look upon Woodstock as the peak of human, attainment. And I don't share that feeling at all. It was contemptible. And, my buddies, I took acid that weekend, but my buddies, when it wasn't the peak of human experience at all. Anyway, but there was a lot of good that came out of it, to be sure.
Yeah.
Uh, the whole concept of meditation was totally foreign to the culture, and now it's quite common.
So
Well,
when
I
you,
have one more question, Chris, about sort of that era and your time in it. But could you tell us about seeing 2001: A Space Odyssey in theaters?
You would bring that up. My senior year, I did a fair amount of experimentation on psychochemistry, and that came out in the summer of '69. The movie came out. We were all very much looking forward to it, and I was kind of winding down with my LSD thing because the breaks were kind of getting metal to metal, and it was beginning to dawn on me that maybe this wasn't the wave of the future. Nevertheless, on the way into the theater, somebody slipped me a little yellow pill, the color of sunshine.
Ah.
And I took it and went into the movie. And, to use crude hippie terms, I mean, I got off with the movie. And so when we got to that light show at the end, which at the time was like, like, oh my God, it's kind of laughable now. But yeah, they had to kind of peel me out of the chair at the end of that.
I saw that movie in IMAX in Los Angeles a few months ago, and that sequence is so long. Not in a bad way, but it's like, oh man, this must have been insane when it came out. It's like 20 minutes long of just these
Well,
crazy.
it works with Yellow Sunshine. I'm not sure. I can't vouch for without it though.
It's interesting. My girlfriend was really liking the movie, but then she got like legitimately terrified at that sequence because, it started to go back and forth between these crazy interplanetary, intergalactic visuals, and then the close up on the astronaut's face being terrified, and that really struck something in her. And she didn't like it, but I'm thinking the fact that it struck you means that it is obviously very powerful. But what an incredible movie. That's wild that you got to see it in
Spoken
theaters.
like a
Yeah,
true brother.
as spectacle certainly, but in terms of and we were scratching our heads. What was that all about? But and I never read Clarke's book, and I think he was a pretty serious thinker. Arthur, wasn't it Arthur Clarke? I believe so.
Yeah.
Arthur C. Clarke. Yeah.
But the monolith, seems to have represented a visitation of a portal to transformative evolution and transformative perception. And I think that's kind of relevant because I think that's kind of where we are right now. Or at least that's kind of what I feel my mission is, or to be part of that.
Yeah, so maybe this is a good segue, but considering your sort of distaste with the hippie movement in general during those times, how did you pick up the ball and keep moving? And having seen the grand vision then and decided to move forward, like what was your path from then on?
I kind of did some, I hung a shingle in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I rented a little 10 by 16 office on Main Street. And, came up with some graphics and taught once in a while. I was committed to it. I mean, I was a trained meditation missionary. I didn't know, nothing else made sense to me. I mean, Maharishi imprinted on us the priority of getting this incredible technique and all the implications thereof out to the world. And to this day, I still feel that's a legitimate and valid enterprise. But yeah, it was nothing much came of it in a nutshell. What was the name of the organization? Institute for Physical Fitness in Lenox, Mass. She took my course, fell in love with it, and had me teach the school there. And I taught like I had associations with New York and Hollywood show business folks. So I taught Norman Mailer. I don't even know if that name rings a bell to you.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, I was his private instructor, and people like that.
That's insane.
Wow.
Yeah. Short, very short guy. So I've been teaching on and off for years. And at a certain point, I remember when I got married to my first wife, we're out in Buffalo, New York, and we're at the house, and they had a little reception, and her dad was a vice president of a very small local steel operation. And he's in the corner with drinks with his buddies, and I'm in the other corner, and people are just mingling. And I just looked over and I just saw the scenario of his buddies looking at me, asking him, what does he do? And him kind of trying to maneuver around, oh, he's a meditation. He's a what? So shortly thereafter, I got a job, and have had a very successful career for 35 years in sales, which was another interesting experience. But every day of that 35-year career, I think to myself, yeah, I'm doing this till I can figure out how to make the meditation thing happen. And that's still where I'm at. Making some progress, though.
That's good. That's cool. So have you ever written any books, or what are the things that you've thought about doing to monetize
I
it?
don't write books. I don't write books, Luke. I write titles.
Okay.
You know how in the seed the whole tree is there. So I get it, and I read titles to it. I'm not to be facetious, but I'm working on a book.
Well, that's awesome.
You'll be the first to know.
Cool. Could you tell us about the simultaneity of time and timelessness?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it needs a better title, but that's the after I'm 74, after a lifetime of studying and meditating and interpolating you know, if you put a gun to my head and said, give it to me in one sentence, what is it? What's going on? What's the message? What's truth? And the simultaneity of time, that is the essence. I'm looking here on the table. I've got the Heart Sutra from Tibetan scripture, and I recommend it to you. But the human experience is based on certain assumptions about reality, and they've all been kind of land based or space time based. Yeah, and as needs be, because that's the world we live in. But to the extent that mysticism or spirituality, for lack of a better term, impacts culture periodically, as you know, different teachers and prophets come, that is the message. That's the breakthrough. And it tends, it's an experiential thing. The purpose of meditation is to transcend space and time. And at the risk of sounding brand loyal, you know, if I had a nickel for every group I meditated with, I'd have a lot of nickels. And if I had a nickel for everyone that transcended space and time, I'd have one nickel. And so that's the name of the game. The purpose of meditation is to transcend space and time. And to my experience, there's a specific technique which gets you there, and that's the one I'm still loyal to. And you know, you hear people say, "Oh, gosh, I can't meditate." You know, my mind's like, you know, it's all over the place. Yeah, it takes a technique, and lacking a specific technique, I think watching the breathing is not a bad substitute. But the purpose is for the mind to settle down. I came up with this phrase of falling awake. You know, Maharishi used to talk about a fourth major state of consciousness. There's waking, dreaming, deep sleep, which we're all familiar with. And there's this fourth state of transcendental, of consciousness, when the mind settles down as in sleep, but stays awake as in waking. That's the fourth state of consciousness. And the name of the game of human evolution, as I understand it, and it takes eons to get there, is to develop the capacity to live in that timeless state while you're functioning in the world. And the practice involves, first of all, establishing a familiarity with that inner silence, and then just by virtue of familiarity, it sticks to you as you come out into your day-to-day life. That's the practice. If I had a complaint as I look back on Maharishi's teaching, he kind of simply, you have to meet it halfway. You have to also, you know, you've seen that diagram of the guy digging the tunnel from one end and from the other. You have to expose the mind body to the silence. That's deep meditation. But as you know, as he sold it, that's it. That's all you got to do. And you know, in like 4 to 5 years, you're going to be enlightened. And it had 4 to 5 years came and went for a lot of people, and they said, wait a minute. And there's all kinds of things, you know, whatever you can do. And the various cultures have, you know, any number of practices where to, you know, right activity, as the Buddhists call it, you know, avoiding wrong activity. You
The
got
rubber
to meet.
meets the road.
Yeah, you got to meet it. You got to meet it halfway. And that's the lifestyle stuff. That's the character development stuff.
I'd love to hear a
So
bit more about. Sorry, Kevin.
yeah, no, go ahead, Luke.
I'd love to hear a bit more about your specific technique or methods, if you're willing. But first, why is it the goal to experience enlightenment and this transcendence from space and time? Why is that the purpose or the aim of meditating?
My understanding it, we all grew up with the concept of evolution. That's kind of the Western scientific touchstone. Is that's amidst the chaotic world, that's kind of the organizing principle that and we've all with the fifth grade science class with the giraffe evolving the longer neck to get the leaves at the top of the year, right?
Right.
So
Sure.
presumably the human structure is the apparent pinnacle of that process. My understanding, and this isn't original, by the way, is that the whole purpose of the universe is the evolution to realization. That's what it's all about. It's not to get the leaves at the top of the trees. It's not just to get the prehensile thumbs so we can pick stuff up and make tools. That's all fine. But that the whole name of the game, the meaning of the universe is to evolve, to resolve the problem of the universe, which is suffering. That's what time, space, life involves, suffering. And the first time I heard this, I remember it was I was at a lecture by the Dalai Lama, and you open the first page of anything Buddhist and it talks about the Four Noble Truths of Suffering. And I remember the first time I read that, I mean, dude, that's kind of harsh. I mean, how are you going to sell this? Nobody wants to hear about suffering, right? But that is the human reality, and the purpose of religion or philosophical pursuit is human beings trying to confront suffering, loss, which is inevitable, which is part of life. So the problem needs to be solved, and the solution is to get out of the realm of suffering, and that involves that involves evolving various nervous systems that can support that process of liberation. So it's not like, oh, you're into spiritual stuff. No, that's that's what it is. That's the whole story. I don't know if that's an answer, but
Yeah. I mean,
it's not just for people who are into spiritual stuff.
Yeah. I've heard some people describe Buddhism as like a philosophy, a religion of despair, having not really delved into it too deeply. They see the suffering stuff and they equate it with nihilism of some sort, of like, what's the point of living, without getting into the actual meat of the dichotomy between samsara and nirvana, and recognizing that there is an established path towards real enlightenment that makes earthly life not suck.
Maharishi used to say there, not just Maharishi, but Eastern philosophy, there's a couple of, in terms of evolution, there's a couple of nervous systems above human. And one of the downfalls is that, according to legend, that life is so cushy there that this is the gods and the demigods, if you're familiar with that structure, that there's no impetus to pursue the Dharma. So they, the gods and demigods, they say, live for, eons until the ticket runs out. And then they're back, a cockroach again or whatever, pick up the ball wherever they left off. So in the human life, my understanding is a human incarnation is such a precious gift, because only the human nervous system can balance the equation, can finish the job, can resolve the problem of universe. Get it? Universe, right?
Oneness.
Yeah. So we have these, these images of the sage or the yogi in the cave, and that's resolution. That's solving the equation. Although I'm coming to appreciate that any act of heroism, large or small, is a manifestation of that resolution, albeit temporary. But
Yeah. Well, if I may ask, is that why you've settled on the simultaneity of time and timelessness? Because you recognize on some level that as limited beings who suffer and strive, we nonetheless have access to something like a pure realm or an unconditional taste of freedom or something like that.
yeah, it's the nature of reality is um, simultaneously time and timelessness. And when we can access the timelessness, call it peace, call it calm, call it epiphany, call it what you will. That's when we light up. That's we like that stuff. We like that. Like the horse that chews on the stall because he needs the minerals. We like those things. But it's always already here. And it all sounds so Hallmark card-ish, but it's profoundly true. And we can kind of play, those of us who are intellectually inclined, we can play games with manipulating these concepts, but they're just concepts and we're just playing games. The rubber meets the road when we drop all that stuff, rest in that timeless reality, which is always here. It's not anywhere else. It's always here now. And then that experience, be it for 20 minutes twice a day, which is kind of the prescription. When you come out of that, what the Buddhists call grasping and clinging, I love that. Be a great name for a law firm, I think. Grasping and clinging. Right?
And earning. Don't forget earning.
Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. But when you come out of that state, out of meditation, the egoic, the worry mind, it's just like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, okay. It's just not as grippy. And practicing that mental discipline, if you will, on a daily basis and taking advantage of the opportunities that you recognize as a result of that better mental environment. And you don't have to. That's optional. But one thing that happens when you deep meditation regularly is that opportunities, you start to have options as to your reactivity to situations. Now you can do it the old way, or you could start the rewiring process, but those options become available, whereas before they're just not available. But that optionality increases as you proceed down the road. And funnily enough, it seems that challenges, you get bigger problems too, which seems appropriate, when you're able to handle, when the karmic bills, I don't know, the lords of karma, not always, but they if you've got some more money in your account, they're going to start sending that bill that they've been sitting on for a while. I find, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But which is still right, of course.
Well, also, I think it's true that as you're ready to grapple with more complex and bigger, hairier challenges, they inevitably come your way. And sometimes, if your willingness is there to engage with them sincerely, they actually make you stronger, make you bigger, make you wiser, you know.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time fretting about the state of the world, the problems of the world, at least as I see them. And I've come to this thought a lot of, what would it be like if dot dot dot. And we had a previous episode where we talked to two of our friends who study their dreams and interpret their dreams a lot, and I asked what would it look like if the worlds would be full of people who regularly looked at their dreams and analyzed their psyche. But similarly, I have wondered what the world would look like if essentially everyone were enlightened, or if everyone had sort of transcended suffering. Um, is that something that you think about, or is that kind of not the point of meditating collectively or being part of groups like that?
Hold on a minute. Let me gather my thoughts.
Take your time.
Yeah. The I think there's certainly validity to people, and this was, one of Maharishi's big thing, people practicing meditation and group meditation. And he had this thing about getting a certain percentage of people meditating and it would affect the environment. And I'm sure there's something to that. I'm at this point in my life, I'm coming to see that courage and character and exercising that in the life that's in front of you is really, I'm kind of an intellectual on a good day, and that's not a bad thing, but it's real easy to just chase your tail for a long time and come up with scenarios. And it's funny, after I was a meditation teacher for 10 years. And then I told you about the scenario with the father-in-law and, get a job. And so I got a job. People like me, I dropped out of school. I was disgusted with it, ADHD, blah, blah, blah. So I did what people like me do. We go into commission sales, and I was a skinny little macrobiotic selling frozen meat plans in the hills of Vermont. And let me tell you something. I learned more that first year. It was an absolute spiritual breakthrough. I had my Boston liberal prejudices about people in pickup trucks with shotguns. I fell in love with those people. It was an absolute spiritual breakthrough.
Yeah.
At least as powerful as the 10 years of meditation. Do with that what you will.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I love that idea of courage and character. And I think Carl Jung said that sincere moral effort is just as important as getting in to see a psychotherapist, something like that. And I love how you go out into the world and grapple with reality, having to make money and work a job, and you learn actual tolerance, which is the pillar and hallmark of some of the spiritual traditions you wouldn't get just from sitting on the cushion, right?
Yeah. What was it? Trungpa Rinpoche, he had a book about
spiritual
he had a phrase
materialism.
called spiritual materialism. And it's no different than material. It's worse. It's more pernicious because it comes with the self-righteousness and all that bullshit.
Yeah, could you explain that to us?
The
idea of spiritual materialism. Could you explain the concept, Chris?
This is where I go into reaction a little bit. So one of my first titles so after 10 years in the TM and the human potential and the self-help movement, right, I came up with a title for a book, Don't Come Bitching to Me. That was the title of the book. I just got so sick of the insular, morally superior. It just, Mommy, if these people are so spiritual, why are they such assholes? You know what I'm saying? I just got done with it. And being among common folk in the hills of Vermont, selling freezer pan at the kitchen table, and kind of falling in love with humanity and hardworking people that love their kids and work hard, and it was an absolute revelation to me as a Boston liberal. That's all I can say. So, whereas on the one hand, I spend a lot of time, I have a spiritual practice. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of praying. I do a lot of mantras. But, people ask me, oh, are you a Buddhist? And I go, I don't know. I have a very dear friend who's a Buddhist monk. We're kind of pals, and he's also my teacher. Am I a Buddhist? I don't know. Buddha was a Buddhist. That's about all I can give you. You know what I'm saying? I'm really, even at this late date, I'm still kind of in reaction to all that stuff. I'm highly allergic to it.
Yeah.
The navel gazing phenomenon. Be careful of it.
Yeah, fair, fair. That's good advice.
I don't know if that's an answer or not. Oh, we have to take that another level.
Well, it sounds like your whole moral stance is don't be a dick and don't use spirituality as another possession that you are in possession of that lets you feel superior to other people, and that's a pretty
it's a huge
intuition.
trap. It's a huge trap. I have close friends and relatives and people that are close to me that in all kinds of in Catholicism and Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism and such not. And I can visit these traditions, and especially when the church is empty, and I can derive sustenance and inspiration from a systems design. We need some innovation here. This stuff isn't working. It's not doing it. None of it's doing it, left or right. None of it's doing it. We need some fresh thinking here. We need some reframing. I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. But I remember Maharishi told me once, he says, we always have to reframe this teaching in the language of whatever, in the language of the people and in the time we find ourselves in. And so that's the challenge that's the kind of mission impossible that I live with happily. But and that's why this, simultaneity of timelessness, you can't really sing to it. It's not sexy, and I certainly intend to build on that in terms of a presentation. But if I had to boil it down to one phrase, that is, like gravity. Was the gravity there before Newton discovered it? But he formulated a concept called gravity, and people could then work with it. Religion is a subset of philosophy, and philosophy is the attempt to make sense of the environment and come up with a plan for how to organize ourselves. So that's the challenge. That's the challenge, and exciting. And it's funny because I watch a lot of podcasts all over the place, and I can see it. It's in the air. I mean, there's your generation, you young people. I can see it, and it must be organic because I see it in a lot of different places that aren't necessarily communicating with each other. And so it gives me hope because, I've been kind of an anachronism, and I feel like in a way that my perspectives kind of make more sense as time goes by.
I think that's a really important point. And as a, a young guy, I see people, my age and even much younger, even maybe in their late teens, early 20s, there does seem to be this really strong, genuine yearning for a more spiritualized life. And it, like you said, there are tons of books out there. There have been books out there for many decades about how to meditate, how to discover your inner world, whatever you're looking for. But I think that's definitely true that these teachings need to be sort of reframed into more modern language and modern sensibilities. And I'm sure there's lots of people trying to do that. But that's why it's so interesting, back in the 60s, there really was this social movement, this popular movement, supposedly grounded in Eastern spirituality. But today, it doesn't seem like there's something standing out yet where it's like, Gen Z is really into this book or this meditation practice. And it does seem like now, maybe more than ever, we really need young people to find that sense of wholeness or a spiritual compass or something like that. And it's a really interesting thing to think about. Like, do you suggest books, or does someone step up and write a new book, or like what is the way to kind of pass the torch on, Does it's so interesting, there's so much on social media now, so much like you said on podcasts, but it seems like it's kind of scattered in a way. There's bits and pieces of knowledge that seem to resonate with people, but
Yeah.
it does seem like young people, I mean, I feel it too. I'm sure most of us feel it, like there's so much scary stuff going on in the world, and the need for a sense of spiritual direction and reassurance is just as strong as ever.
Yeah.
Are there any, I guess on that note, are there any favorite books of yours that you'd recommend to people kind of getting into meditating or anything like that?
No, you can't learn meditation from a book. I mean that's my experience. I mean, there's
Fair
all,
enough.
meditate. What the purpose of language? What did Rand call it? The purpose of logic is non-contradictory identification, right? So meditate. The term meditation, like the term love, like the term God, they're almost, there are so many different definitions. So when I talk about meditation, I'm talking about meditation can mean contemplation, it can mean concentration, it can mean any number of practices. When I refer to meditation, I'm talking about a specific deep meditation technique that takes you to the fourth state, anything that takes you to the fourth stage of consciousness. But there's there are protocols, and this is me talking, all right, with my background. So this is what I got. But yeah, there's a course, and it takes a few days, and it's very specific. It's not amorphous. It's not mood making. It's very specific protocol to set up the circumstances where the mind falls awake, where just like the mind effortlessly falls asleep when circumstances are set up. You got your blanket and your teddy bear, and you lie down and you fall asleep. And likewise, there's a specific protocol whereby the mind can, in spite of itself, effortlessly drop into this fourth state of consciousness. And it's like, what's that line of type with the monk here, where he's pushing through. It's a black and white. It was big in the 60s. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I'll never forget William Gibson. I had a close association. My mentor, in fact, was Dr. Margaret Brenman Gibson from Harvard. Her husband was Bill Gibson, the author of The Miracle Worker. He was a kind of a crusty old guy, and I taught their son, and they took the meditation course. And Bill came out of the initiation session, with his eyes like, and I'll never forget his words quoted to me. He says, "You will be amazed at the profundity of this experience," and that's what we're talking about.
Which is to say, you'll be amazed at the profundity of your experience, unmitigated by your rational thoughts that interpret reality, because reality is a miracle, and like enlightenment is already here, something like that. And I was reflecting how, like, Chris, your call for a reframe on the language around spirituality for a new generation, an update, a software update, so to speak,
Yeah.
seems to be tied to like the problem of concepts and words actually reifying experience and becoming stand-ins.
Well,
The menu is not the meal. Could you speak to that?
The map is not the territory. Well,
Korzybski, yeah.
That's what language is. I mean, I had this thing I came up with about money and language are two specifically human things that make human civilization possible. Let's start with money. Stop me if I'm going too far off.
No, please. I love money.
So you make bread and I make bricks, and you need some bricks, but I don't need any bread. So nothing's going to happen. You with me?
Uh-huh.
Money is that arbitrary object which we agree on holds value, and everyone else will agree that it holds value in incremental units, so that you can buy my bricks even though I don't need your bread. You got it right, of course. Language is the same way, that whereby we can tokenize objects and concepts and manipulate them in our brain artificially, come up with new combinations, and then apply that in the world. There's a parallel function there, right? And it's a wonderful thing. It's a uniquely human thing. This process, I mean, Luke, to talk about your visualizing a world where, and by the way, there are many worlds where that is the case. It's just not this one. You be a good boy and you might go there.
Okay.
According to the Buddhists, anyway. We brush our teeth, we change our underwear. There's certain hygienic things that civilized people do, and we wouldn't think of not doing them. Clean water. Those aren't givens. Those are things that we insist on, and because we know life is better when we do them. So it's not inconceivable that a community could organize itself around basic mental hygiene of deep meditation. And it's, of course. So it's kind of entry level utopia. It's like, otherwise, there's no end to the mental stuff. There's no end to bitching and moaning and grasping and clinging. There's no end to it, literally. But when you transcend mind and you drop into that state, the fourth state of consciousness, it just all goes away, and there's a biochemistry to it. I'm not pitching you here. I'm describing. I mean, this. We've all had that experience. In fact, Maharishi used to say that, we talked about waking, dreaming, sleeping, the first three states are commonly experienced states of consciousness. And then the four states of consciousness, there's a fifth, sixth, and seventh, by the way. But he says, in the transition between each of those states, going from waking to dreaming and dreaming to deep sleep, and he says at that juncture, we pass through. It's kind of like neutral when you're shifting in the old 5-speed. So it's not that this is, we've all had those transcendent experiences and we tend to remember and cherish them. The trick is to have a practice, a specific protocol which produces that experience and using it as part of your daily hygiene for, say, 20 minutes twice a day. That's the program. That's the that gets you into the dance. I tell them I'm 74 years old and I feel like I haven't even started yet. Like it's all been just kind of prep work. This is where the action is. And then there's no end. I mean, when we lose the insanity and the self-obsession, God knows what we could create. I have some ideas, by the way, but that's the fun part. But let's get sane. Let's just stop being crazy, and obsessed and at war with each other,
Yeah.
Let's become people of goodwill and honesty and get her done.
Yes,
This
sir.
is what I. This is what I
sir.
think
At once, sir. Right away.
You're laughing.
I'm laughing. I'm laughing out of joy because what I hear you outlining is something like the importance of virtue, courage, sanity, truth, honesty, mental hygiene, like having heart. And those are things that are intrinsic to every single human being. Everyone has access to those. And most of us are clouded and at war with ourselves. And it might make sense to actually turn towards that and start creating a bulwark against the forces of darkness in your own heart first.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm laughing out of joy because what you're outlining is so beautiful, but so simple.
It's probably beyond the scope of this conversation, but man, I'm told they have these sim games. I'm an old guy. What do I know? But you can design civilizations and all that. The gaming is big, I hear. It gets really interesting when you there's just so much to be done. I mean, I have this thing about profanity. I don't believe in it, and I have all these rules about not swearing in front of the opposite sex and older people and younger people. And on the other hand, I swear like a son of a bitch. I mean, I can't get 3 sentences out without swearing. So welcome to my hypocrisy. But I have a phrase for the age that's ending. They talk about the coming age of Aquarius. We're coming to we're in the dying throes of the age of fuckery, and there's no better word for it. Treachery is a possible substitute, but it doesn't really grasp it. And I don't choose that word lightly, and I don't choose it to be cute. But I'm also a student of geopolitics and history, and the level of fuckery is left and right, up and down. It's unbelievable. And, we can whine about that, but, so we have to, so much new has to be designed. I mean, fuckery in education, fuckery in health, fuckery in government, fuckery in religion. And it's become so systematized that it's not even like, it's just, everyone's picking up a paycheck, it's just like punching the clock. This is the way it is. It's so root bound, let me I made a lot of notes and I didn't get to half of it, but I love this thing. I got it from Ayn Rand. This, I call it, well, she called it MIPA. It's the way to analyze a philosophical system. and it's 5 elements: metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, politics, and aesthetics. I love this. So metaphysics, what is the nature of reality? Epistemology, how do we know what we know? Ethics, based on 1 and 2, how do we behave? How do we conduct ourselves? Politics, based on 1, 2, and 3, how do we organize our community on whatever scale? Aesthetics, based on 1, 2, 3, and 4, how do we express those values in art, architecture, etc.? Okay, keep the time because this is good.
Hell yeah.
So the world that we live in, I call it the world we live in. It's at least 100, maybe 1,000 years old. I call it the world perspective of science, WPOS. We're going to come back to that acronym, all right? The world perspective of science is that the universe is utter chaos. Am I right or am I wrong? That's
second law
am
of
I right or am I wrong?
thermodynamics. Inertia.
The chaos.
Yeah.
Meaningless. And we have this priest class of specialists who can help guide us through all the different areas of difficulty, right? It's got to go. It's got to go. It's all corrupt. So we come up, and it's based on the metaphysics of a chaotic universe. And we replace that with this understanding, transcultural, trans-spiritual discipline, that the purpose of the universe is to solve the problem of the universe. Remember in algebra, you had to solve the equation? What was that? Boy, that came in handy. I got to tell you. I can't tell you how many times I've used my algebra. Balancing the equation is finding the simultaneity of timelessness in time, which is to say, the presence of God in your life in another language, and developing your character, living a good life, and designing working systems. And that's so freaking exciting. It's so freaking exciting. And other than that, I really don't have any strong feelings on the subject.
Don't hold back, Chris. Tell us how you really feel. That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you for your time, sir. And thank you for showing up. You've blessed this space. It's an honor to be interviewing you. And thank you for all you've done for me and my life and the ones that I love. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for the opportunity. God bless you both.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Asclepion. We hope you enjoyed the show and that you feel uplifted, empowered.
Yeah, just make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X and all that shit, all right?
Farewell, friends.